There is something happening to you right now that you have been trying to explain away. You have called it exhaustion. You have called it stress. You have called it a phase, a funk, a strange season you are moving through. But underneath every label you have reached for, there is a sensation you cannot quite name. The feeling that the world you are looking at is not entirely real, that conversations are happening slightly outside of you, that familiar rooms feel like sets, that your own thoughts seem to be watching themselves from a distance. And here is what no one has told you about that feeling. It is not a breakdown. It is not dissociation in the clinical sense. It is not a sign that something has gone wrong in your nervous system or your life. It is the most precise signal your consciousness can send you. It is the observer in you finally waking up. And the moment you stop trying to fix it, the moment you stop running from the strange unreality of it and actually look at what is happening, everything changes. Not because you changed something, because you saw something. And what you see at the quantum level, you fundamentally alter. You are not here today because your life is going well, and you want to keep it that way. You are here because something shifted, something cracked open. Something in the familiar architecture of your daily existence started feeling hollow, and you felt it before you could explain it. And part of you has been frightened of that feeling. And another part of you, the part that clicked on this, knows that the frightened part is wrong. Today, you look at it directly. Today, you stop treating the strangeness as a problem to solve and start watching it as the signal it actually is. Because what you are experiencing right now, the unreality, the quiet detachment, the sensation that the old version of your life is made of cardboard, is the quantum observer in you activating at a level most people never reach. And once you understand what that actually means, not as metaphor, not as comfort, but as the precise mechanics of how consciousness interacts with reality, the experience stops being frightening. It becomes the most powerful thing that has ever happened to you. You are untouchable, not because nothing can reach you, but because you have finally started watching from a place that cannot be collapsed by what you observe, and that changes everything. Let's begin. Look at the feeling itself, not around it, not past it. Look at it directly the way you would look at something that has been sitting in the corner of a room you keep walking through without acknowledging. You have been walking past this feeling. You have been glancing at it sideways and then immediately filling the space with noise, with tasks, with explanations that almost fit but never quite land. And the feeling has remained because what you avoid observing does not disappear. It waits. It grows more insistent. It starts shaping your reality from below the level of your conscious attention, like a current beneath still water that determines where the surface eventually carries you. So look at it now. The strangeness, the unreality, the way familiar things have started feeling temporary, the way your own inner voice sounds slightly less convincing than it used to. The way you can sit in a room full of people having a conversation and feel simultaneously completely present and somehow behind glass. You have felt this. You know exactly what this is, and you have been calling it something smaller than it is. Here is the first thing to understand. Your brain does not experience reality directly. It builds a model of reality continuously, automatically, using every piece of incoming sensory information filtered through the architecture of your existing identity, your beliefs, your memories, your emotional patterns, your expectations about what is real and what is possible. The model your brain constructs is extraordinarily convincing. It feels like direct perception, It feels like you are simply seeing what is there, but you are not. You are seeing what your nervous system has been trained to construct from what is there. And those are very different things. When the model is stable, when the identity that organizes your perception is coherent and consistent, reality feels solid, predictable, real in the way a table is real. Something you can lean on without it shifting under your weight. But when the identity that generates the model begins changing, when the neural patterns that construct your particular version of reality start reorganizing, the model starts to flicker. And what you experience in that flickering is exactly what you have been experiencing. The sensation that things are slightly less solid than they were. The feeling that the familiar world has become a set rather than a place. The strange doubling where you are both inside your experience and watching it from somewhere that has no name. This is not a malfunction. This is the most precise thing your perception can do. It is showing you the seam. Most people never see the seam. They live inside the model without ever catching a glimpse of the fact that it is a model. Their identity stays stable enough. Their neural patterns stay consistent enough. Their emotional loops stay repetitive enough that the construction never becomes visible. They experience reality as a given, not a creation. And that is exactly why they stay inside the same version of their life indefinitely. Not because they lack desire for something different, because they cannot see the mechanism that is generating what they have. You can see the mechanism. That is what the strangeness is. That is what the unreality is telling you. The model has become visible, and the moment the model becomes visible, you are no longer fully inside it. You have stepped even slightly into the position of the observer, and the observer is not subject to what it observes. The observer is the one who determines what becomes real. If what you're seeing right now is landing somewhere real in you, take a second and like this video and subscribe. This channel exists for exactly the person you are in this moment, and there is more here for you. Look closer. In quantum mechanics, there is a principle so strange, so counterintuitive, so resistant to comfortable explanation that physicists have been arguing about its implications since the 1920s. It is the observer effect, and it does not mean what most people think it means. It does not mean that watching something changes it, because the act of watching physically disturbs it. The way a flashlight illuminates a room and moves the dust. That is a common misunderstanding. The observer effect is stranger and more precise than that. What quantum mechanics actually demonstrates is that particles, the fundamental building blocks of physical reality, do not have definite properties until they are measured. Before observation, a particle exists as a wave function, a mathematical description of all the possible states it could be in simultaneously. All the possible positions, all the possible velocities, all the possible configurations. The particle is not in one of those states, and we simply do not know which one. It is in all of them at once, as a superposition of possibilities. And then observation happens, measurement occurs, consciousness interacts with the system, and the wave function collapses. The infinite field of possibility narrows into a single, definite, measurable actuality. The particle is no longer everywhere it could be. It is here, now. Specific. This is not interpretation. This is not philosophical overlay on top of the physics. This is what the mathematics describes and what experiment after experiment has confirmed. The act of observation participates in determining which possibility becomes real. Reality, at its most fundamental level, is not a fixed structure you navigate. It is a probability field that collapses into specific form based on the nature of the observation. And here's where this becomes not just interesting, but immediately relevant to your life. Consciousness is the observer. You are the observer, the identity you carry, the neural patterns that constitute your sense of who you are, what you expect, what is possible, what is real. That identity is the lens through which observation occurs, and the lens determines what collapses from the quantum field into your experience reality. Not metaphorically, mechanically. The way you observe determines what becomes real in your life. When your identity is fixed, when the same neural patterns fire in the same sequences, when the same emotional memories organize your perception, when the same stories about yourself run on automatic, the same probabilities collapse. The same reality manifests. Not because the universe is punishing you for repetition, because the observer is unchanged, and an unchanged observer collapses the same field into the same form. But when the identity begins shifting, when the neural architecture starts reorganizing, when the emotional patterns start losing their grip, when the model of reality becomes visible and you begin to step back from it into the observer position, the probabilities that collapse begin changing. The field is the same, the possibilities are the same, but the observer is different, and a different observer collapses a different reality. That is what is happening to you right now. The observer in you is changing, and because the observer determines what becomes real, your reality is in the process of changing with it. The strangeness you have been feeling is not confusion. It is a sensation of the lens shifting. It is what it feels like when the observer steps back from the model and begins to see the model itself. And that step, that single movement from inside the construction to the position of witnessing the construction, is the most powerful thing a human being can do, because from the observer position, you are not subject to what you observe. You are the one who determines what collapses into form. You are not at the mercy of the reality you have been living. You are the one watching it, and what you watch, you change. Sit with that for a moment. Don't rush past what you just saw. Now let me show you what this looks like from the inside. Let me show you the exact mechanics of the experience you have been having so that you can stop interpreting it as a problem and start recognizing it as the precise process it is. There is a man named Elias. He is not a spiritual seeker. He is not someone who meditates or reads philosophy or thinks particularly deeply about the nature of consciousness. He is someone who built a life carefully, deliberately, with real effort and genuine intention, and then one day woke up inside that life feeling like a stranger. Nothing dramatic had happened, no crisis, no loss, no obvious rupture. He went to sleep one night as the person he had always been, and something shifted in the space between sleep and waking, and he opened his eyes into a morning that looked exactly like every other morning but felt somehow like a stage set. The coffee tasted right. The light came through the window at the same angle. His thoughts moved through the familiar channels, but there was something watching all of it that had not been there before, something that stood slightly behind the experience and observed it without being pulled into it. He found this terrifying. He spent weeks trying to return to the feeling of solidity he had lost. He worked longer hours. He made plans. He called people he had not spoken to in months. He reorganized his apartment. He did everything the old version of himself would have done to feel real again. And none of it worked because the thing that had shifted was not on the surface of his life. It was in the position from which he was watching his life. And you cannot rearrange the furniture to change the angle of the eye. The more he tried to rebuild the feeling of solidity, the more transparent the construction became. He could see himself performing the routines. He could watch himself reaching for the familiar emotional patterns and finding them slightly out of reach, like trying to grip something that had become slightly less dense than his hand. The anxiety this produced was significant because Elias had built his entire sense of safety on the stability of the model, on the solidity of the constructed reality, and the construction was becoming visible. And then something happened that changed everything. He stopped trying to fix it, not because he gave up, not because he resigned himself to the strangeness, but because someone showed him what the strangeness actually was. Someone pointed at the experience and said, "You are not losing your grip on reality. You are gaining the ability to see reality from outside the construction that was generating it. The observer in you is waking up, and the observer cannot be threatened by what it observes because it is the one who determines what becomes real." Elias sat with that. He looked at the strangeness directly for the first time. Without trying to make it go away, he watched the transparent quality of the familiar world without reaching for the old solidity. He watched his thoughts moving through the channels without following them down. He watched himself watching, and in that watching, something extraordinary happened. The fear dissolved, not gradually, instantly, because the fear had been generated by the belief that the strangeness was a problem, that the observer position was a malfunction rather than an activation. And the moment he saw clearly what the strangeness actually was, the belief that generated the fear had nothing left to stand on. It collapsed, not because he pushed it away, because he looked at it directly, and it could not survive the clarity of his observation. And then, in the space where the fear had been, something else became visible. The sense that the world was not solid was still there, but it no longer felt like loss, it felt like freedom. Because a world that is not fixed is a world that can change, a reality that is a probability field rather than a stone wall, is a reality that responds to the observer, and Elias was beginning to understand that he was the observer. That understanding changed everything about how he moved through his days. Not because he manifested something specific, not because he visualized a new life and watched it materialize, but because his relationship to reality had fundamentally shifted. He was no longer inside the construction, subject to it, defined by it. He was watching it, and what he watched, he was beginning to change. You are Elias. You have been Elias, and you are at the exact moment in the story where someone is pointing at the experience and saying, "This is not what you think it is." Tell me something in the comments. What was the moment when you noticed you were watching your own life instead of living it? When did the familiar first start feeling like a set? I want to know what you actually saw, not what you thought about it. Look closer. Let's go deeper into what you are actually seeing when the world starts feeling slightly unreal. Because the neuroscience here is as precise as the quantum mechanics, and understanding both is what transforms the experience from frightening to powerful. Your brain is a prediction machine. This is not a metaphor. This is the primary function of the organ. The brain's job is not to perceive reality as it is. Its job is to predict reality as it was, and then compare incoming sensory information against those predictions and update the model when the predictions are wrong. Neuroscientists call this predictive processing, and it means that what you experience as perception is almost entirely constructed from prediction. With sensory information serving primarily as a correction mechanism when the prediction fails, your identity, the specific, consistent, repeating pattern of thoughts, emotions, reactions, and self-narratives that constitute who you are, is the primary source of those predictions. The brain uses the identity as a template. It says, this is who we are, this is what we expect, this is what reality looks like from here. And then it builds the experience of reality to match. Every morning when you wake up, your brain reconstructs the same version of you using the same neural patterns, generating the same predictions, collapsing the same possibilities into the same experienced reality. It does this automatically without your permission, without your awareness, because that is what it was designed to do. The problem, or rather the opportunity, is that this system only works as long as the identity remains stable. When the neural patterns that constitute the identity start changing, the predictions start failing. The brain reaches for the familiar template and finds it slightly different than it was. The emotional memories that used to organize perception start losing their charge. The stories that used to feel like truth start sounding like recordings. The reactions that used to fire automatically start arriving late or not at all. And the experience of all this is exactly what you have been feeling. The strange neutrality, the sense that familiar things are slightly less real than they were, the quiet detachment, the feeling of watching yourself from a step behind. Neuroscientists studying identity restructuring in deep states of consciousness have observed something consistent. When the neural patterns associated with the fixed identity begin reorganizing, brainwave activity often shifts from the high beta frequencies associated with constant prediction and threat detection toward the slower alpha and theta frequencies associated with creativity, intuition, and deep receptivity. The brain becomes less reactive and more receptive, less dominated by the past and more open to new patterns of information. In those slower, more coherent brain states, something remarkable happens to perception. The filters that normally narrow your attention to the information that confirms your existing identity begin to loosen. The nervous system stops scanning exclusively for threats and familiar patterns. It becomes sensitive to subtler signals, to connections that were always present but previously invisible, to possibilities that the old identity would have filtered out before they reach conscious awareness. This is why, during the phase you're in right now, you may have started noticing things you never noticed before. Patterns in conversations that carry more meaning than the words, coincidences that feel too precise to be random. A sense that the world is responding to something inside you that you cannot fully name yet. These are not hallucinations, they are not wishful thinking. They are the result of a nervous system that has become less rigid, less reactive, more open, and is therefore perceiving a wider band of the information that is always present in your environment. The old identity was a narrow lens. It was precise and functional, and it built a very specific reality. But it filtered out everything that did not match its predictions. And what it filtered out was not nothing. It was the field of possibility that exists beyond the constructed reality. The quantum field of probabilities that your new shifting, more open observation is beginning to interact with in a fundamentally different way. Here's what that means practically. The reality you are moving toward is not something you have to build. It is something you have to stop filtering out. The possibilities that are beginning to become available to you have always been present in the quantum field. They were simply invisible to the observer you were before. The lens was too narrow, the predictions were too fixed. The identity was too rigid to allow the wave function to collapse into anything other than what it had always collapsed into. Now the lens is changing, the observer is shifting, and the field is beginning to reorganize around the new quality of your observation. This is not a promise. This is quantum mechanics. Pause here. This is not a thought exercise. This is an observation. I want you to do something very specific right now, not as a meditation technique, not as a manifestation practice, as a direct act of observation. Notice that you are listening to this. Notice the awareness that is receiving these words, not the thoughts that are responding to them. The awareness that is receiving them. There is a layer of you that is simply present, simply witnessing, simply here. It is not analyzing. It is not agreeing or disagreeing. It is not constructing a response or comparing this to something it has heard before. It is watching. It is the observer. And it has been here the entire time you have been alive, watching every experience you have ever had without being changed by any of them. Now notice that observer, the awareness that is watching right now. Does it have a problem? Is it anxious? Is it confused? Is it overwhelmed by the strangeness of what you have been experiencing? Watch carefully, because the answer, if you look directly, is no. The observer is not in distress. The observer is simply watching. The distress belongs to the identity, the constructed self, the model, the collection of neural patterns and emotional memories that constitute the person you have been performing. But the observer beneath that identity, the awareness that watches the identity, it is completely still. It is completely clear. It is not touched by what it observes. That stillness is not absence. It is the most powerful position in the universe, because from that stillness, from that clarity, from that untouched awareness, the quantum field responds not to your desperation, not to your plans, not to your effort, to your observation, to the quality of your seeing, to the frequency of the consciousness that is doing the watching. You are that observer. You have always been that observer. The identity you have been calling yourself is what the observer has been watching, and the identity is changing, and you, the one watching, are untouched by that change. You are the watcher, not the watched, and the watcher determines what becomes real. Take a breath. Notice what just shifted. Don't analyze it. Just watch it. Now let's look at the specific experience of detachment that tends to accompany this phase, because this is where most people make the critical mistake that closes the doorway of transformation before they can walk through it. When the identity starts losing coherence, when the neural patterns start reorganizing, when the emotional charge that used to make familiar things feel urgent and real begins to quiet, the experience can feel like loss, like something is being taken from you. The aliveness that used to attach to familiar routines seems to be draining away. The emotional investment that used to make your goals feel important starts feeling strangely optional. Relationships that once felt central to your identity begin to feel not less meaningful, but differently meaningful, as if you're seeing them from a slightly different angle, and the angle reveals things the previous view concealed. This is frequently misinterpreted as depression, as disengagement, as the sign that something has gone wrong with the emotional system. And the instinctive response is to try to recover the previous emotional intensity, to reach back into the old patterns and force the familiar feelings to return, to manufacture urgency where neutrality has settled, to recreate the emotional charge that once felt like being alive. But look at what you are actually reaching for when you do that. You are reaching for the emotional loops that maintain the old identity, the worry, the striving, the familiar anxieties, the emotional investments that kept the old neural architecture intact. You're trying to feel like the old version of yourself because the old version of yourself felt at least familiar, at least it felt like something, at least it felt real. And here is the precise, uncomfortable truth about that impulse. The emotional charge you are trying to recover is not aliveness. It is the feeling of being locked inside a specific probability structure. It is the sensation of the wave function being collapsed in the same direction repeatedly. It is the experience of a fixed observer generating a fixed reality. And it felt real because it was consistent, not because it was free. The neutrality you are experiencing now, the quiet detachment, the lessening of the old emotional grip, is not the absence of aliveness. It is the beginning of a different quality of aliveness, one that does not depend on the old emotional loops to feel real, one that does not require the constant reinforcement of the familiar narrative to maintain coherence, one that is, for perhaps the first time, not constructed from fear or habit or the need to maintain a particular story about who you are. That neutrality is a space between identities, and in quantum terms, it is the moment of maximum possibility. Because when the observer is no longer locked into a fixed identity, the probability field is no longer being collapsed in a single fixed direction. The possibilities are genuinely open. The field is genuinely free, and the reality that can emerge from that openness is not limited to the reality that the old identity could have generated. This is the doorway. And most people, feeling the strange emptiness of standing in it, turn around and walk back through. You are not going to do that because now you know what the doorway is, and knowing changes the relationship to the experience. The same neutrality that felt like loss 5 minutes ago is now something you can look at directly and recognize as the quantum field reorganizing around the new quality of your observation. The same detachment that felt like confusion is now recognizable as the observer stepping back from the model to see the model itself. The same strangeness that felt like something going wrong is now visible as something going precisely, extraordinarily right. Look closer. Let's talk about synchronicity. Because if you are in this phase of transition, you have almost certainly been experiencing it. The coincidences that feel too specific to be random, the conversation that happens at exactly the moment you needed to hear what was said, the book that falls open to the page that answers the question you did not know you were asking. The person who appears in your life carrying the exact quality of presence you were reaching for without knowing you were reaching. The way the external world seems to be quietly rearranging itself in response to something internal you cannot fully articulate. You have probably been dismissing these, or at least holding them at arm's length, because the part of you that is trained to interpret reality through the lens of the old identity knows that coincidences are not supposed to mean anything, that the universe does not respond to your inner state, that the appearance of meaningful pattern is a cognitive bias, the brain finding connection where there is only randomness. But look at what that dismissal is actually doing. It is the old identity defending its probability structure. It is the fixed observer insisting that the field cannot reorganize around a new quality of consciousness. It is the model protecting itself from the evidence that the model is changing. Because here is what the science of heart-brain coherence actually shows. When the nervous system shifts from high beta reactivity, the constant prediction and threat scanning of the stressed, fixed identity toward the more coherent, regulated states of alpha and theta, the brain's ability to detect pattern increases dramatically. Not because the patterns are being created by the wishful thinking of a desperate mind, but because the filtering mechanism that was previously excluding them has loosened. The nervous system is now processing a wider band of information, and in that wider band, connections that were always present become visible. The synchronicities are not the universe magically rearranging events for your benefit. They are your perception, expanded by the reorganization of your nervous system, becoming sensitive to the patterns that were always there. The quantum field does not change. Your observation of it changes, and because what you observe is what collapses from the field into your experienced reality, the reality you experience begins reflecting the new quality of your observation. What looks like the world rearranging itself is actually the observer changing. And an observer that has stepped back from the fixed identity, that has loosened its grip on the old probability structure, that is watching from the still clarity of the untouched awareness. That observer collapses a different reality, not because it is trying harder, because it is seeing more clearly. This is not belief, this is quantum mechanics. Now let's look at the identity itself, because this is the layer that most people do not reach. They get as far as understanding that their nervous system is reorganizing. They get as far as recognizing that the strangeness is a transition rather than a malfunction. They even get as far as feeling the power of the observer position. But then they stop. They stop just before the deepest layer, the layer where the identity itself is seen for what it is. Watch this carefully. You have a sense of yourself, a sense of who you are, a continuous narrative that runs through your experience and organizes it into the story of a particular person with a particular history, particular tendencies, particular limitations, particular possibilities. This narrative feels like truth. It feels like the most basic, undeniable fact of your existence. You are you. The sense of being you is the most immediate, most certain thing you know, but look closer. Watch the narrative. Watch it the way you would watch a river, not from inside the current, but from the bank. Notice that the narrative is made of thoughts, that it requires continuous maintenance, that it is assembled moment by moment from memories and interpretations and predictions and self-referential loops that constantly feed back into themselves to maintain the appearance of a stable, continuous self. Who is watching the narrative? This is not a trick question. It is the most precise question you can ask. Because if you are watching the narrative, you are not the narrative. If you can observe the story of yourself, you are not the story. There is a watching that is prior to the story. There is an awareness that is present before the narrative assembles itself. And that awareness, the one, the one that is watching right now, the one that was watching before you knew what to call it, the one that has been watching every experience of your life without being changed by any of them. That awareness is not the identity. The identity is what the awareness watches. The identity is the construction The awareness is the observer, and the observer is not subject to what it observes. This is the recognition that transforms everything, not because it gives you power over your identity, but because it reveals that you were never the identity to begin with. The thing you've been defending, protecting, trying to maintain, desperately reaching for when it starts to dissolve, that thing is not you. It is something you have been watching, and you have confused the watch for the watcher. The moment you see this clearly, not as a concept, not as a philosophical position, but as a direct observation of what is actually happening in your experience right now. The identity loses its grip, not because you pushed it away, because you saw it for what it is, and what has been seen cannot unsee itself. The dissolution you have been experiencing, the strangeness, the unreality, the sense that the familiar self is becoming transparent, that is not loss, that is recognition. The observer recognizing that it was never the thing it was watching. The awareness recognizing that it is not the identity. The watcher stepping back from the watch. And discovering that the step back is not into emptiness, it is into the most real, most stable, most powerful position available to consciousness. And from that position, you are untouchable. Not invulnerable, not disconnected, not above the experience of being human, but untouched at the level that matters. Because the circumstances of your life, the challenges, the changes, the losses, the uncertainties, those reach the identity. They reach the constructed self. They do not reach the observer. The observer watches them, and what the observer watches, the observer changes. Pause here. This is not a thought exercise. This is an observation. Close your eyes for a moment if you can. If not, let your gaze soften and simply notice. There is something watching right now. Not thinking about watching, not analyzing the concept of watching. Actually watching. The awareness that is present as you listen to this. The consciousness that is here now receiving these words. Now ask yourself very quietly, without reaching for an answer, what is watching? Not who, what. Let the question sit without demanding a response. Just watch what happens when you ask it. Notice the slight shift in the quality of awareness when attention turns toward itself. Notice that the watching does not stop when you look at it. It does not become self-conscious or collapse under observation. It simply continues, clear and still, watching itself. Watching. That is the observer. That is the untouchable. That is what you are underneath everything you have been calling yourself. Now open your eyes or return your gaze and bring that quality of watching with you, not as a technique you are performing, as a recognition of what was already there. The world looks slightly different from here, doesn't it? Not because anything external changed, because the quality of the observation changed. And what changes the observation changes what collapses from the field into the experienced reality. You are the observer, and the observer is the most powerful position in the universe. Let's go deeper into what this means for your specific situation. Because the abstract understanding is important, but the application is where transformation actually occurs. And the application requires looking at something very specific that you have been avoiding. There is a version of your life that you have been trying to maintain, not the version you want, the version you have. The familiar structure of your daily existence, the relationships, the patterns, the routines, the self-narratives, the emotional investments. All of it organized around an identity that is now, whether you chose it or not, beginning to dissolve. And part of you has been fighting that dissolution. Part of you has been trying to hold the structure together even as the foundation shifts beneath it. Even as the observer in you steps back and the model becomes visible. Even as the strangeness increases and the familiar world becomes transparent. And here is what that fighting has been costing you. Every time you reach back into the old emotional patterns to feel real again, you strengthen the neural architecture of the old identity. You reinforce the probability structure that the old observer was collapsing. You slow the reorganization of your nervous system by insisting that it maintain the patterns it is trying to release. You close the doorway of the transition by refusing to stand in the strangeness of the threshold. The fighting is not protecting you, it is keeping you inside a reality that the observer in you has already outgrown. Look at the specific thing you have been avoiding. You know what it is. It is the thing that surfaces in the quiet moments and then gets quickly covered by activity. It is the recognition that keeps trying to become conscious and keeps getting suppressed by the part of you that is not ready to let the old structure go. It is the truth about your life that if you looked at it directly and clearly and without flinching, would make it impossible to continue pretending that the old version of yourself is still who you are. You do not have to name it out loud. You do not have to share it. But you do have to look at it because what you avoid observing controls you. And what you observe directly in the clear light of the untouched awareness loses its power over you the moment you see it. Not because looking at it makes it go away, because looking at it from the observer position, from the still, clear, untouchable awareness that watches without being pulled into what it watches, reveals it for what it actually is. Not the solid, immovable, defining fact it has appeared to be, but a probability that has been collapsing repeatedly because the observer was not looking at it clearly. A pattern that has been maintaining itself because the identity that generated it was not being observed. A construction that dissolves not through effort or force or the desperate application of positive thinking, but through the simple, unflinching act of being seen. What you are avoiding looking at is the exact thing that transforms when you do. Let me show you the second layer of the parable. There is a woman named Mira. She has been in Elias's world, not his world specifically, but the same phase of transition, the same dissolution of the familiar self, the same strange neutrality settling over the things that used to feel urgent. And Mira, unlike Elias, did not find someone to point at the experience and name it. Mira found the recognition on her own, but the path she took to find it was through the thing she had been avoiding most. For years, Mira had organized her identity around a particular story of herself as someone who was almost there, almost ready, almost at the point where she would begin the life she actually wanted. The story was exquisitely constructed. It had reasons and explanations and the kind of internal logic that makes a narrative feel true even when it is serving primarily to prevent action. She was almost ready to leave the relationship that had become a comfortable cage, almost ready to pursue the work that actually called to her, almost ready to stop performing the version of herself that other people had come to expect, and start inhabiting the version that had been waiting quietly in the space the observer occupied. Almost, always almost, and then the strangeness came, the same strangeness you have been feeling. The world becoming slightly transparent, the familiar life beginning to feel like a set, the emotional charge draining from the reasons she had always given herself for staying almost. the inner voice that had narrated the story of almost starting to sound for the first time like a recording rather than a truth. Mira did not try to fix it. She did not know why. Something in her recognized that the fixing impulse was the same impulse that had kept her almost for years. The impulse to reach back into the familiar structure and restore the sense of solidity. The impulse to collapse the old probability. So she let the strangeness be strange. She let the transparency be transparent. She watched the almost story from the observer position without following it into the emotional loops that had always given it its power. And in that watching, she saw it clearly for the first time without the protective layer of almost. She saw that the story was not protecting her from failure. It was protecting her from success, from the terrifying, exhilarating, identity-dissolving possibility of actually becoming the version of herself she had always been almost ready to be. The story of almost was not a description of where she was in her journey. It was the mechanism by which the fixed identity maintained itself against the threat of the observer's full activation. The moment she saw this, not thought it, not analyzed it, but saw it directly with the clear, unflinching awareness of the observer, the story lost its grip. Not because she pushed it away, because she looked at it and it could not survive the looking. The wave function of almost collapsed finally into something definite, not into certainty about what would happen next, into the clarity of the observer who had stopped maintaining the illusion. Mira did not immediately know what to do. The observer position does not come with a plan. It comes with clarity, and from clarity, the next step becomes visible. Not the entire path, the next step. And the next step, when you are watching from the untouched awareness, is always precisely what it needs to be. You have a story like Mira's. You know what it is. The specific narrative that has been keeping you almost. The particular construction that has been maintaining the old probability structure against the natural reorganization that is trying to occur. And you have been avoiding looking at it directly because some part of you knows what happens when you do. What happens is not collapse. What happens is clarity. And clarity is the only force that transforms without resistance. Look at it now, whatever it is, from the observer position, from the still, clear, untouchable awareness that watches without being pulled into what it watches. Look at the story, watch the mechanism, see the way it has been maintaining itself, and notice what happens to it in the light of your clear observation. You do not have to do anything with what you see. The seeing is the doing. The observation is the transformation. This is not metaphor. This is what happens when the wave function collapses under the observation of an observer who has stepped back from the identity that was generating it. What you watch, you change, and you are watching now. If there is an illusion you watch fall apart, a story about yourself or your life that could not survive the moment you actually looked at it, leave it in the comments. Not an explanation of it, just what you saw when you finally looked. That kind of clarity shared here does something for everyone reading it. Here's the layer underneath all of this that almost no one reaches. And it is the layer that makes the difference between a temporary experience of expanded awareness and a permanent shift in the quality of consciousness you bring to your life. The observer position is not something you achieve. It is not a state you enter through sufficient practice or the right technique or the accumulation of enough understanding. It is what you already are underneath the construction of the identity. It is the awareness that has been watching every experience of your life without being changed by any of them. The still point that has been present through every storm of emotion, every crisis of identity, every moment of confusion, and every moment of clarity. You have always been the observer. The question is not how to become it. The question is how to stop mistaking yourself for what the observer is watching. And the answer to that question is the same as the answer to every question in this transmission. Look. Look directly. Look at the identity and see it as the construction it is. Look at the story and see it as the recording it is. Look at the emotional patterns and see them as the loops they are. Look at the fixed reality and see it as the collapsed probability it is. And as you look, notice who is looking. Notice the awareness that is doing the watching. Notice that it is not the thing it is watching. Notice that it is still and clear and untouched and present and real in a way that the construction never. That recognition, not as a concept, but as a direct, lived, immediate experience, is the activation of the quantum observer. And once it is activated, it does not deactivate, because what has been seen cannot be unseen. Once the awareness recognizes itself as the observer rather than the observed, the mistaken identity loses its absolute grip. It may reassert itself. The old patterns may resurface. The familiar narrative may try to reconstitute itself. But there is now a part of you that has seen through it, a part that knows, a part that can watch the reassertion without being fully captured by it. And that part, the part that knows, the part that watches, the part that has seen through the construction, that part is growing. It grows every time you choose to observe rather than react. Every time you watch the pattern rather than follow it down. Every time you stand in the strangeness of the threshold rather than running back to the familiar solidity. Every time you look directly at the thing you've been avoiding and let the observation do what observation does. The quantum observer in you is not a potential you are working toward. It is an actuality that has been obscured by the mistaken identification with the construction. And the moment the obscuring seen through, the moment the identity is observed from the observer position, the observer is no longer obscured. It is simply what it has always been. Watching, clear, untouched, untouchable. You are untouchable, not because nothing can reach you, but because what you are at the deepest level cannot be threatened by what it observes. The circumstances of your life reach the identity. They reach the construction. They do not reach the awareness, and you are the awareness. You have always been the awareness, and now, finally, you are beginning to know it. Let's talk about what this means for the reality that is forming around you right now. Because the transformation is not only internal, it never is. The quantum field does not distinguish between inner and outer. The observer does not only collapse the internal experience of reality, the observer collapses the entire field. The external circumstances, the relationships, the opportunities, the encounters, the texture of daily life, all of it responds to the quality of the observation. When the observer shifts, when the identity begins reorganizing, when the neural patterns start moving toward greater coherence, when the awareness recognizes itself as the watcher rather than the watched, the external field begins reorganizing as well. Not immediately, not dramatically, but precisely. The way a probability field reorganizes when the observer changes. quietly, systematically, and in ways that are not always visible until you look back from a distance and see the pattern of what shifted. The relationships in your life are already responding to the shift in your observation. You may have noticed this. The ones that were built on the old identity, on the patterns, the emotional loops, the familiar dynamic of the constructed self, may be feeling different, strained in ways that are hard to articulate, or simply less necessary than they once were. Not because they are bad or the people in them are wrong, but because the observer has shifted and the reality that was organized around the old identity is reorganizing. The relationships that were expressions of the old probability structure are being asked to evolve or release. The opportunities that are beginning to appear in your life, the ones that feel slightly unexpected, slightly larger than what the old identity would have allowed itself to reach for, those are the new probabilities beginning to collapse. The field responding to the new quality of your observation, the reality organizing itself around the emerging identity rather than the dissolving one. This is not something you need to force. You do not need to manufacture the new reality or visualize it into existence or apply effort to its emergence. You need to continue doing what you are already doing, watching, observing, staying in the observer position rather than collapsing back into the construction, allowing the strangeness of the threshold without rushing to either side of it, trusting not as a spiritual practice but as a quantum mechanical fact that a different observer collapses a different reality. The only thing that can prevent the new reality from forming is the return to the old observer, the retreat back into the fixed identity, the desperate reassembly of the familiar construction because the openness of the threshold feels too uncertain, too empty, too much like loss. And now you know what that retreat costs. You have seen the mechanism, you understand what the fixed observer generates, and you have felt, even briefly, the still clarity of the untouched awareness that watches from beyond the construction. You will not fully retreat, not because you are incapable of it, because you have seen, and what has been seen cannot be unseen. The reality that is forming around you right now is not the reality of the old identity. It is the reality of the observer who has stepped back from the old identity and begun watching the field from the position of clear, untouched awareness. And that reality is not limited by what the old identity believed was possible. It is limited only by the clarity and consistency of the observation, and you are becoming clearer every time you choose to watch rather than react. Every time you observe rather than follow the old pattern down. Every time you stand in the strangeness and recognize it as the doorway it is. Pause here. This is not a thought exercise, this is an observation. Right now, in this moment, I want you to watch something very specific. Watch the pull to return to the familiar. Notice it. It is almost certainly present. The part of you that has been listening to this transmission and simultaneously been preparing the reasons why this does not fully apply to you. The part that has been constructing the counter-narrative. The part that is reaching, even now, for the comfortable certainty of the old identity. Watch it. Do not fight it. Do not try to make it go away. Simply observe it. See it as the mechanism it is, the old identity protecting its probability structure against the observation that dissolves it. Watch the protection. Watch the reaching. Watch the construction of the counter-narrative. And now notice, who is watching that? Who is observing the pull to return? There is an awareness that is watching the old identity try to reassert itself, an awareness that is not caught in the reassertion, an awareness that is simply watching. That is you. That is the observer. That is the untouchable. And the old identity, watched from that awareness, cannot maintain its grip. Not because the awareness pushed it away, because the awareness saw it, and what is seen clearly from the observer position cannot continue to operate in the dark. It cannot continue to run your reality from below the level of your conscious attention. It cannot continue to collapse the same probabilities indefinitely when the observer has stepped back from it and begun watching it directly. This is why the activation of the quantum observer is not just a shift in inner experience, it is a shift in the trajectory of your life. Because the trajectory of your life is determined by the observer, by the quality of the consciousness that is interacting with the quantum field, by the identity that the observer is stabilized within. And the observer in you is stabilizing in something new, something clearer, something that is not the constructed self, but the awareness that watches the constructed self, something untouchable. Let's look at the specific mechanics of how this stabilization occurs, because understanding this is what allows you to cooperate with the process rather than inadvertently interrupting it. The stabilization of a new identity, a new observer position, happens through coherence, not effort, not visualization, not the repetition of affirmations or the accumulation of positive experiences. Coherence, the alignment between the awareness, the attention, and the emotional state. When all three are pointed in the same direction, when the observer is watching from clarity rather than fear, when the attention is resting on the emerging reality rather than reinforcing the old one, when the emotional state is regulated and open rather than contracted and reactive, the quantum field stabilizes around the new observer position. The emotional regulation piece is critical, and it is where most people who understand the intellectual framework still get stuck. Because the nervous system has been trained over years or decades to generate the emotional patterns that maintain the old identity, the anxiety, the urgency, the familiar emotional charge that made the old reality feel real. And those patterns do not disappear simply because the intellectual understanding has shifted. They are encoded in the body, in the neural pathways, in the habitual responses of the autonomic nervous system. This is why the observer practices matter, not as techniques for feeling better, as direct interventions in the nervous system's tendency to return to the old patterns. Every time you practice watching from the still awareness rather than reacting from the old emotional loops, you are strengthening the neural pathways of the observer position and weakening the pathways of the reactive identity. Every time you stand in the strangeness of the threshold without reaching for the old solidity, you are training the nervous system to tolerate the coherent openness that allows the quantum field to reorganize. Every time you observe the old pattern rather than following it down, you are choosing the observer over the observed. And these choices compound. The nervous system learns from experience. The brain reorganizes around the patterns that are consistently reinforced. The more consistently you return to the observer position, the more reliably you choose watching over reacting, observing over following, clarity over the familiar emotional charge. The more stable the observer position becomes, the more natural it feels, the more automatically the awareness recognizes itself as the watcher rather than the watched. This is the process you are in right now, not the sudden, dramatic breakthrough that transforms everything in an instant. The steady, precise, compounding stabilization of a new observed position, a new quality of consciousness, a new way of interacting with the quantum field that generates a new quality of reality. It does not require perfection. It does not require that you never retreat into the old patterns. It requires only that you keep watching, keep observing, keep returning to the still clarity of the untouched awareness when the old patterns pull you back. Keep choosing the observer over the observed moment by moment in the small, ordinary moments of your daily life. Because the quantum field does not respond to grand gestures, it responds to the consistent, coherent quality of your observation. And the consistent, coherent quality of your observation is what you are building right now, every time you watch rather than react, every time you observe rather than follow, every time you choose to stand in the strangeness of the threshold and recognize it as the doorway it is. The reality that is forming around you is the result of this, not of effort, not of force, of the clear, consistent, coherent observation of an observer who has stepped back from the construction and begun watching the field from the position of untouched awareness. You are building something real, and it is being built not through what you do, but through what you see, through the quality of your observation, through the clarity of the consciousness that is interacting with the quantum field. Look closer. Now I want to speak directly to the specific fear that has been accompanying this transition because it is present. You know it is. The fear that the dissolution of the old identity means the loss of something essential. The fear that if you stop maintaining the familiar construction, if you fully step into the observer position and allow the old reality to reorganize, something important will be lost. Some version of yourself that you need, some connection to the people and places and things that have defined your life, some anchor that keeps you from drifting into a formlessness that has no shape, no substance, no ground to stand on. This fear is understandable. It is the identity protecting itself, and it is based on a misunderstanding of what the observer position actually is. The observer position is not formlessness. It is not the absence of a self. It is not the dissolution of everything that makes you specifically, uniquely you. It is the recognition that what is specifically, uniquely you is not the construction. It is the awareness, the consciousness, the observer. And the observer does not disappear when the identity reorganizes. It becomes more present, more clear, more able to engage with life from a position of genuine choice rather than automatic reaction. The relationships that matter, the ones that are built on genuine recognition rather than the mutual reinforcement of fixed identities, do not dissolve when the observer activates. They deepen because you are now capable of actually seeing the other person rather than seeing the projection of your identity onto them. You're capable of genuine presence rather than the performance of presence. You are capable of love that is not contingent on the other person maintaining the role your identity assigned them. The work that matters, the contribution that is genuinely yours to make, does not disappear. When the old identity reorganizes, it becomes clearer because the observer can see what the fixed identity was too defended to acknowledge. The specific quality of consciousness that you bring to the world, the particular way you see, the unique angle of your observation, that does not belong to the construction. It belongs to the observer. And the observer, freed from the constraints of the fixed identity, is more able to express it, not less. The ground you are afraid of losing is not under the construction. It is under everything. It is the awareness itself, the still, clear, untouched consciousness that has been watching every experience of your life without being changed by any of them. That is the ground, and it does not disappear when the identity reorganizes. It becomes more accessible, more stable, more obviously what it has always been. You are not losing yourself. You are finding what you actually are. And what you actually are is far more stable, far more real, far more capable of genuine life than the construction ever was. The fear is the old identity's last argument. Watch it, see it for what it is, and then watch what happens to it in the clear light of your observation. Let me show you the final layer of the parable, because there is a third character, and his story completes what Elias and Mira began. His name is Kyle, and Kyle reached the observer position. He found the still clarity of the untouched awareness. He saw through the construction of the identity. He stood in the strangeness of the threshold and recognized it as the doorway. He felt the untouchable quality of the observer, and then he made the one mistake that is available at this stage of the journey. He stopped watching, not dramatically, not through a crisis or a collapse. He simply got comfortable. The new observer position felt so stable, so clear, so obviously more real than the old constructed identity that Kyle began to treat it as an achievement rather than a practice. He began to think of himself as someone who had arrived, someone who had made the shift, someone who was now permanently established in the observer position and no longer needed to actively watch. And in that comfort, the old patterns began to reassert themselves quietly, subtly, the way water finds its way through the smallest opening in a dam. The emotional loops that had maintained the old identity started firing again. The familiar narrative started sounding convincing again. The reactive patterns that the observer had been watching began gradually to pull the awareness back inside the construction. Kale did not notice immediately because the shift was gradual and because the part of him that was reasserting the old patterns was also the part that would have noticed the reassertion. The observer was being absorbed back into the observed, and the absorption felt from the inside like returning to normal, like the ground that had felt unstable was becoming solid again. Until the strangeness returned, until the world started feeling slightly unreal again, until the familiar life began to feel like a set again. And Kale found himself back at the threshold, wondering how he had gotten there again. And this time he understood something he had not understood the first time. The observer position is not a destination, it is a direction. It is not something you arrive at and then maintain effortlessly. It is something you choose moment by moment in the ordinary texture of your daily life. The choice to watch rather than react. The choice to observe rather than follow the pattern down. The choice to return to the still clarity of the untouched awareness when the old patterns pull you back. This is not a failure of the transformation. This is the nature of the transformation. The quantum field does not stabilize around a new observer position through a single act of recognition. It stabilizes through the consistent, repeated, compounding choice to observe from that position, through the practice of watching, through the ongoing commitment to clarity over the comfortable certainty of the familiar construction. Kyle understood this the second time he stood at the threshold. And understanding it, he stopped treating the observer position as an achievement and started treating it as a practice, a living, ongoing, moment-by-moment practice of watching, of choosing to see, of returning to the still awareness every time the old patterns pulled him back into the construction. And in that practice, the stabilization deepened in a way it had not the first time, because now it was not built on the comfort of having arrived. It was built on the consistent practice, compounding choice to keep watching, to keep observing, to keep returning to the clarity of the observer every time the construction tried to reconstitute itself. This is where you are. This is the practice that is available to you, not the one-time breakthrough, the ongoing, deepening, compounding practice of watching, of choosing the observer over the observed, of returning to the still clarity every time the old patterns pull you back, of trusting not as a spiritual belief, but as a quantum mechanical fact that the consistent, coherent quality of your observation is what determines the reality that collapses around you. You have seen the observer. You have felt the untouchable quality of the awareness that watches without being changed by what it watches. You have recognized, at least momentarily, the difference between the watcher and the watched. And that recognition, however brief, however fleeting, is the beginning. It is the seed of the stabilization. It is the first collapse of the new probability. Now the practice is to keep watching. Here's what I want you to do. Not as homework, not as a technique to apply and then forget, as the integration of everything you have seen in this transmission. For the next 24 hours, practice noticing the observer, not informal meditation. In the ordinary moments of your day, when a conversation pulls you into a familiar emotional pattern, notice the pull. Watch it. See the mechanism, and then notice who is watching. When the old narrative starts reasserting itself, the story of almost, or the story of not yet, or the story of what you are and what you are not, notice it. Watch it from the still clarity of the awareness that is not the story, and then notice who is watching. When the strangeness returns, and it will, because you are still in the threshold, still in the process of reorganization, do not try to fix it. Watch it. Recognize it as the quantum field reorganizing around the new quality of your observation. Stand in it. Let it be strange. And notice who is watching the strangeness in every moment, in every situation, in every experience that the next 24 hours brings. There is a version of you that reacts, and there is a version of you that watches. Choose watching. Not perfectly, not permanently, just more often than you did yesterday, and the day after that, more often than today. This is the practice. This is the stabilization. This is how the quantum observer activates fully and permanently. Not through a single breakthrough, but through the consistent, compounding, moment-by-moment choice to watch. And as you practice, notice what happens to the reality around you. Notice the subtle reorganization, the slight shift in the quality of your encounters, the new possibilities that begin to appear in the spaces where the old patterns used to dominate, the relationships that begin to feel different, more genuine, more alive, more capable of real contact, the work that begins to feel clearer, more aligned with what the observer actually sees rather than what the old identity was willing to allow. Notice all of it, not with the grasping attention of someone trying to confirm that the practice is working. With the clear, relaxed, open attention of the observer who watches without needing what it watches to be any particular way. Because the observer's power comes not from controlling what it sees, but from seeing clearly. And clear seeing is the only force that transforms without resistance. What you watch, you change, and you are watching. Something in you recognized everything that has been said in this transmission before your mind could catch up. Something in you knew the strangeness was not a problem before you had the language to articulate why. Something in you has been watching all along from the still clarity of the untouched awareness, waiting for the moment when the constructed identity would become transparent enough to see through. That moment is now. It has been now for some time. The strangeness you've been experiencing is not the beginning of the recognition. It is the recognition having been underway for longer than you realized, finally breaking through to the surface of your conscious awareness. The observer has been activating. The quantum field has been reorganizing. The new reality has been forming in the probability space that the dissolving old identity has been opening up. You have not been lost. You have been the process of being found by the awareness, by the observer, by the consciousness that has always been watching and is now finally beginning to know itself as the watcher rather than the watched. And that knowing, that recognition, is the activation. The quantum observer in you is not something that needs to be created or built or earned through sufficient practice. It is what you are. It has always been what you are. The activation is simply the moment the awareness recognizes itself, the moment the watcher stops mistaking itself for the watched. The moment the observer sees the construction clearly enough to know it is not the construction. That moment is this moment, and every moment you choose to watch rather than react, every moment you choose to observe rather than follow the old pattern down, every moment you return to the still clarity of the untouched awareness when the old patterns pull you back. You were never meant to look away, not from the strangeness, not from the dissolution, not from the transparency of the familiar world or the quiet detachment or the strange neutrality settling over the things that used to feel urgent. You were never meant to fix these things or escape them or rush through them to the other side. You were meant to watch them, to see them clearly, to stand in the observer position and let your clear seeing do what clear seeing does. Transform what it observes, not through force, not through effort. Through the simple, precise, quantum mechanical fact that what you observe, you change, that what you see clearly, you alter. That the observer is the most powerful position in the universe, not because it controls what it sees, but because it sees. And clarity is the only force that transforms without resistance. You are that observer. You have always been that observer, and now you know it. The quantum observer in you has activated. And from this position, from the still, clear, untouched awareness that watches without being changed by what it watches, you are untouchable. Not invulnerable, not disconnected, not above the experience of being human, but untouched at the level that matters. Because the circumstances of your life, the challenges, the changes, the uncertainties, the losses, the beautiful and difficult texture of being alive, all of it reaches the construction. None of it reaches the observer, and you are the observer. The world is a probability field, and you are the one who determines what collapses from it into your experience reality. Not through what you force, through what you see, through the quality of your observation, through the clarity and consistency of the consciousness that is watching. Watch clearly. Watch consistently. Watch without needing what you watch to be any particular way. And let the reality that forms around your clear observation be what it is, which is always precisely a reflection of the observer who is doing the watching. You are not here to fix your life. You are here to watch it transform the moment you stop looking away. And you have stopped looking away. Right now, in this moment, you have looked directly at the thing you have been avoiding, at the strangeness, at the dissolution, at the transparency of the familiar world, at the observer underneath the identity, at the untouchable awareness that has been watching all along. You have seen it, and what has been seen cannot be unseen. In the comments below, I want you to share one word, just one. The word that describes what you observed when you stopped looking away. Not what you thought about it, what you actually saw. One word from the observer position. One word from the still clarity of the untouched awareness. Drop it below, because every word you drop is an act of observation. And every act of observation in this field strengthens the clarity of everyone who is watching. We are not a community of people who think similar thoughts. We are a field of observers whose collective clarity amplifies the seeing for everyone in it. Your one word matters. Your observation matters. The quality of your watching matters. Because what you watch, you change, and what we watch together, we change together. If this transmission reached the part of you that has been waiting to be reached, share it with someone who needs to stop looking away. Not because you want to send them a video, because giving someone else the courage to look is one of the most powerful acts of observation available. When you share this with someone, you are not just passing something along. You are creating a field between two observers, and in that field, the clarity doubles. What one person cannot quite see alone becomes visible when someone else says, "I see it too," and you can see it too. That shared seeing is its own kind of quantum collapse. It is the observer saying to another observer, "You are not imagining this. Look." Stay in the watching. Stay in the clarity. Stay in the still, untouched, untouchable awareness that is what you actually are. The observer is the most powerful position in the universe, and you are the observer. What you watch, you change. What you avoid watching controls you, and you have stopped looking away. Now you see, and what has been seen cannot be unseen. You were never meant to look away. The quantum field has already registered that something in you has shifted, and what happens next in that field is exactly what the next exploration is about. The video on this channel called The Quantum Field, Noticed You've Changed, shows you the precise mechanics of what the field does when the observer changes and why the reality forming around you right now is responding to something you may not yet fully see in yourself. Watch it next.